What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Age of Quarantine. My name is David Castillo. You can follow me over at Confines World. Hope everybody is having a wonderful, wonderful Friday. Cheers to you guys. This one's coming from Kane Head High. Great Jersey brewery. And feeling absolutely good. We have an amazing guest today. He's my really good pal, Carl Porcaro. Carl, I mean, quite frankly, I think is just one of the best guitar players to come out of New York. I mean, ever since the 80s. I mean, we have Raw Deal, we have Breakdown, we have Killing Time, we have King's Destroy, Alone in a Crowd. I mean, he's been involved in so much amazing stuff, and also just kind of involved in the other side of the music industry with the gear and Earthquaker devices. He's an awesome fucking dude. Really excited to have him on the Age of Quarantine. So let's bring Carl up right now. Boom, boom, boom. So cheers, everybody. Let's see where my man is at.
Hey, how's it going, man? Good to
The
see you.
fucking dude.
Good.
Coming live and direct from Brooklyn, bitch. What's up?
Yeah. Dude, thanks for that great intro. Appreciate it. And thanks for having me on. I'm honored to be on.
Yeah, man, dude. We speak the truth out here on the Age of Quarantine, fam. We speak the goddamn fucking truth. And
it took a long time. I thought you were never going to call. I thought it was going to have to be the next pandemic that went up.
No, we don't even need to wait for the surge, man. Like the resurge, we're getting you on the first wave, man. You're a first wave guy to me. So, Carl, thanks for joining us. You're the fucking shit. So, here, Age of Quarantine, as you know, we kind of dig into musical history, man, just starting from when you were a kid all the way up to kind of present day. I mean, you've been in some of my favorite New York hardcore bands, doom metal bands, motorcycle riding, AC/DC listening, guitar playing, motherfucker.
That's right.
So, let's get into it. How did we start the journey? Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Yonkers?
I grew up in Yonkers, New York. Yeah. Just for those that are, don't know the city, it's right above New York City. Next stop after the Boogie Down Bronx. So it's a suburb, but it's right on the edge of the city. So I started in Yonkers, and God, music. I mean, to be honest, the first instrument I ever played was the accordion, because so I had the squeeze box going, and that was like, I was encouraged by my parents to play the accordion, but like, I was a rock and roll kid. And like, before, like, I'm old enough so that like, I mean, there was a lot of classic rock in my life before like metal took over, and then eventually hardcore. So that my journey like started with the classics, and then
were your parents like musically inclined people? Did they try and kind of get you into stuff, or like how'd that go?
My dad was like a music guy, and he was like he was very old school, like, I mean, like, I had like older parents, so like my dad was like a Dixieland jazz guy, and he was like you, man. He was like a promoter. Like he put on shows and stuff. Like he would hire like I don't like Fats Waller and like Eddie Condon and throw these big. They called them dances, like, so like that was his steez. And then like around the house it was like the 70s, and I guess it was like the country music revival. So my parents weren't like country people, but there was like country music in my house. And then like when I got a hold of the stereo, it was like, went from Linda Ronstadt to like all Kiss.
All right, cool. So was Kiss like kind of like one of the gateway?
Yeah, that was a gateway drug for sure.
Was that the one? I mean, I feel like every time I talk to somebody who really was, more in their childhood, a little bit more in the 70s on this program and stuff like that, it's just, Kiss were, they were the action heroes. They were the best,
Right.
And they just had the reach too, and they managed, I feel like, even if you were like, 7, 8 years old, they had like the kind of cartoonish quality and the glam thing. But then if you were older too, you were kind of into them. So was that like the first time that you were hearing rock and roll and were like, ooh, like I like this. I'm gravitating.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Kiss and Led Zeppelin. I sound really old right now, but I am. So.
That's cool. Led Zeppelin was the first band, Guns N' Roses and Led Zeppelin for me. And it was really because of my brothers, because, my parents listened to Spanish sung music primarily. I mean, I'm first generation Colombian. So
right.
it was like 80s pop radio. And then my brothers putting on particularly those bands. And then so on and so forth. So after kind of getting into Kiss, you said that kind of you were into kind of metal first. Is that the way that it progressed, or?
Yeah, I mean, it was always like there was always like I was never like into like I was never into the lighter kind of music. Like it always had the music had to have like the guitar and the drums had to be kind of really heavy and really upfront for me to even understand it. Like even at an early age, I don't know why, but that's like what I was drawn to. So. I guess Kiss like kind of like got me into like Van Halen and Iron Maiden and Ozzy and Sabbath and Dio and all that kind of stuff. And that was like when I would first that era is when I first started venturing out of the house and going to shows.
Got it.
So like I think the Peace of Mind tour. Iron Maiden, that was like one of my first concerts. So
yeah, see, that was what was gonna be my next question. Was like, when you started going to shows, were you going to like big stadium shows primarily?
Yeah.
That must have been something. Peace of Mind tour. Jesus Christ.
I was so psyched. I was so psyched because it was like, my parent. I grew up in a house that was a little bit strict, so it's like I just couldn't get out and about like at the early age like I would have wanted to, so it's like by the time I finally got to go see like Iron Maiden, I was like out of my mind, like so super psyched, like getting on the Metro North train from Bronxville, New York, and heading down to the city.
So we're very similar. We kind of like live right outside of New York City. I'm
right.
Island. You're from there, upstate as we call it.
I know.
You're from upstate. So you were kind of going into these metal shows, and you were getting excited about all this stuff. And when did you start really trying to pick up guitar? Because when I think about all of these bands, Led Zeppelin, Iron Maiden, they're like very Guitar Hero bands, right? Like the 70s, it's like Guitar Hero, like music. So
totally.
like you see KK Downing or something, like I want to be like that motherfucker right there,
Yeah.
Was that kind of the effect that it had? And when did you start trying to actually play?
I guess I probably started playing like I'd want to say like 1983 or something like that, 83 or around there. I told you I had the accordion, and I just had no bid. Like I didn't want to have the accordion. I wish I did now. I wish I could pick one up and play it, but like
that'd be
like so like eventually I convinced my dad to like let's get rid of the accordion and like let's go and get a guitar. And it was a really weird kind of experience because it was a very Italian American experience. I just remember we got the guitar and then we read something.
I got the Burnett for you.
Yes.
I knew who I was talking to, so I wanted to make sure I came correct.
Well, we went to we ended up going to I remember we went to like a basement in the Bronx, like someone's house that was like filled with like accordions and a few guitars. So the accordion got traded in, and I came out with like an SG copy, like a Montoya, like a Japanese SG copy, and that's kind of where it all kicked off,
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's cool that you were able to make the power switch, and your parents hold strong to the accordion roots. We may have missed out on some really great records there. So when you started playing, it was kind of more in this metal context, and I feel like obviously, we all love metal and things of that nature. But a band like Iron Maiden, a band like Judas Priest, they're fucking rock stars playing stadiums, and that seems very far away. When did you start kind of journeying into kind of, the stuff that you would become more known for, punk and hardcore and stuff like that? Because if you're starting to play in '83, that's really nascent music. And also, speaking of nascent, I was born that year. So you started playing guitar and I was born. I think
Nice.
there's something there.
A very important year.
Might be something there. It's a great year. So when did you kind of start venturing into kind of underground or more like local music?
Well, when I went to college, like suddenly like there was just like influx of all kinds of like influences and different stuff, and like I found myself going from like something very uniform, like Ozzy and Priest and Dio and Maiden, to like hearing like just randomly different things like Bauhaus, Husker Du, the Angry Samoans, Minor Threat, Suicidal Tendencies, and like I just got influenced by all these things, and also by like Celtic Frost and by Slayer, particularly. And then I didn't really know about New York hardcore. Like I probably went to see the Ramones or something like that. And then I just started to, I don't know how, I guess from the record store and from like picking up like Guillotine fanzine, I started to like read about like New York hardcore, and like then I, like around the neighborhood, you would kind of like see people with like a shirt that was a little different. And it was sort of...
The shirt game was so big. Even when I was going to school and stuff, I was like, if I saw some motherfucker in like a Sound Majority shirt, I'm like, who are you?
Yeah.
I need to know. But I think it's really interesting too at this time, right? It's like, something like Bauhaus and Angry Samoans, like you were saying, like if you're looking back, right, and you're just kind of using the internet, you're looking back, those things seem a world apart, right?
They don't belong in the same sentence, but like...
Yeah, exactly. They seem like, but there weren't that many bands just kind of playing underground music, and they were all sort of connected, I feel like, in different ways. There was a lot of like unlikely allegiances as well.
Right. It's by people a lot, because people didn't have like the full range of information like out there. So it's like whatever floated into your orbit, that you thought was kind of cool, you started listening to and you were influenced by. Like it's like you had to go to, like, a lot of these bands didn't get any press. There was no internet, there was not very little radio away from college radio that played any of this stuff. So yeah, it's like, it's all word of mouth. So you would find yourself like with just a hodgepodge of weird, like mixed, mismatched music, that was like, had something different to say,
Yeah, and I think that kind of forces you to listen to different styles a little bit in a way where now either an algorithm or something else is kind of funneling you down a path to listen to like 1,000 hardcore bands in a row or something.
Yeah.
Which is really kind of not the way it really happened for this. I want to qualify something real fast. You went to school at Fordham. Were you a Fordham dude? So you were going to school in the Bronx at this time. That's where you were. In campus. Got it. So just to kind of set the scene. So we're talking like mid 80s at this point, Fordham University in the Bronx. And did you start going downtown to clubs? When did you start kind of going to kind of smaller shows and things of that nature? What were some of like the gigs where you're like, okay, we're not going to stadiums, they're going to like clubs and bars and
that's the thing, it's like there was like you'd go to a stadium show like twice a year or something like that. It was like this huge event, and then it just went like that to like, I'm going to CB's every Sunday. Like I'm seeing a band every week, and maybe like I'm also gonna drive to Connecticut to the Anthrax and see a band on Friday night, and then maybe I'm gonna like go out to the Right Track Inn on Freeport and see a band on Saturday afternoon. Like,
you're bringing up the Right Track Inn. Boom! That might be an age of quarantine first, bro. That's amazing.
Like I remember seeing like I remember seeing like the New York Hoods and Sick of It All, and like oh God, I'm trying to remember who else. Like just those random bands from the time. But yeah, I would when I found hardcore, I would go anywhere to see hardcore. Like
yeah, and going to Connecticut wasn't that hard for you. You know, since you're kind of more up in the Bronx, it's kind of like not that far.
Yeah, it wasn't that bad. It was like 45 minutes. I just remember so many like drives home from the Anthrax where it was just falling asleep. Like it was so late. Like we went there so often.
Yeah. And obviously, and you know, all of these clubs, I think for you know people who are watching, like they're all very pivotal. Like obviously, there's CB's, which leads the way, I think, as far as fame and notoriety. But if you talk to people like Carl, you know, you hear about City Gardens and the Anthrax and Right Track In, and you know, all of these places created this fabric, and there was a lot of places to play in the Northeast, and a lot of the people involved in New York hardcore were really also from outside, like the guys from Beyond, from Long Island, you're from kind of Bronx upstate, you know, a lot of things like that. So when did you start putting together the first band? And did anything predate Breakdown? Like, did you try anything? Did anything kind of happen to fizzle out? Or was Breakdown like the first, I'm going to try and start a band kind of moment?
Well, you were asking me like my first show, and I kind of figured this question would come up, and I never know, but I really think it was probably like Agnostic Front, Carnivore, and the Crumbsuckers, like somewhere in like the spring of '86. Like I think this was like when Agnostic Front was like in their like thrash-tastic era, you know, and like they always played with Carnivore, and Pete Steele was involved with them and stuff like. So I think I started doing Breakdown stuff like after that. I didn't do anything before. I wrote one song. I was talking to Bill Wilson about this. I wrote one song called Death Unforeseen, which it was one of those things where you play the guitar and you record it on a cassette, and then you play that cassette and then play drums along to it on a box and like recorded it in another cassette player in the other side of the room. And then you add another guitar. So like Death Unforeseen was my only entree into music before Breakdown started.
So you went to this show and you started going to these shows, and what was kind of, I feel like also because as we kind of were saying, but this pre-internet and stuff like that, so you know, you kind of don't even know all the bands probably. You're kind of trying to figure this out. What was it like for you to go, wow, I'm at this, you know, hardcore show and people are losing their minds to Carnivore or some shit? Did it really like blow your mind in a way where you're just like, I can't believe people are at
it? Yeah, I mean, I just started coming every weekend. It was like, it was magnetic. And it was like a sense of community. And part of the community was like people that just came up to you and started talking to you, and then part of the community was like people you thought were gonna like kick your ass, you know, like it was like fear and friendship and music all at the same time, and it just, and you know, I mean, in that first year, there's so many great bands. I saw like, you know, Underdog and like the Crumbsuckers and Ludacris and the Cro-Mags, and from out of town, Dag Nasty came about a year after that first show I saw. And, oh God, so many good bands. Verbal Assault, Gameplay, Uniform Choice, and then like, yeah, it was just so there's so much happening immediately, like, and you were hanging out with the people too, so it's like you're like, oh, I love this band, and I'm here, and I'm hanging out with them. It's like, everybody could do this. Like, why don't I have my own band? You know, like
exactly. And I feel like that's one thing that continually comes up when I have these conversations, and I think it's really an important thing to emphasize again is how, you know, hardcore and punk like kind of have this sort of like, you should at least fucking try it, like get in there, you know, you don't have to go all the way to like mid-end stage production. We can just be like on this level, and we can make art, and I think that that's something powerful. And obviously that led you to start, Breakdown? How did that come together?
Well, there was it was really it was me and Don Angelilli, who was the other guitar player, and we were tight, and we had high school together, and we did all the metal shows together and all that stuff. I think Don was a real sort of chatty guy who talked to everyone, and I think he met Rich, the bass player at the Yonkers public pool that summer, and then we hooked up. Drago was recommended to us by a guy named Tony Pradlick, who was the record store guy in Yonkers. And the record store guy always played a big role of connecting people with music they might like and other people they might get along with. So he hooked us up with Drago, and I don't know. And then Jeff was also from New Rochelle, which is close by, and we were,
So it really was like an upstate band, like a Yonkers thing almost. This doesn't really. It's almost more not really quite Fordham, but it's really even your high school roots were the connection.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Wow, that's something I did not know. I kind of assumed that it was you get to the city and you find the people to play, but little do you know, the Yonkers Public Pool is the best place to start a hardcore in the 80s.
We went to the shows as a crew, coming down, because we were all from White Plains, Yonkers, and New Rochelle.
Yeah.
And Bill Wilson, who started Blackout Records, he was my childhood friend. Went to high school with us too. So he was part of that crew of people that got together and got down to the matinee however we could every.
Drago's asking that Don is chatty, and that I agree. I think Drago's right. I think I agree with you, Carl. We used to do this thing on the island where we would take the Long Island Railroad, and if we were on the same line, we would meet in the back car. So the Babylon line would go through Wantagh, which is where I lived, and by the time we got to the city, there'd be 40 people in the back car, all going to the same show, which was always kind of great.
I'm sure you guys were obnoxious as fuck, to anyone that wasn't part of your crew. Was one of these people.
Dude, so bad. I'm horrible. I'm horrified to think of myself. So you guys started getting the band together, and obviously, I feel when I look back, and of course I'm looking back, I wasn't there, but it feels like the band was really accepted and widely kind of, the early Breakdown stuff has a lot of kind of lore around it, it feels like. But did you feel in the time that you guys kind of came out with something that it kind of hit the scene pretty good, or how was it kind of playing those first shows and kind of just becoming a band?
Well, we didn't. The shows were always good, and people always reacted, and we sold so many demo tapes. It was an absurd amount of demo tapes that I can't believe we had our friends running them off and stuff. It was a whole thing, but we couldn't get a show in New York. We couldn't we played Albany, we played Connecticut, we played Long Island, we played Middletown, New York. I think we probably played something 10 shows out of town before we got a show at the Pyramid, which that was booked by Ray Bees and Ray Capo together, and they called us to play, and it was we were still, I think we were still pretty corny little kids. I think when Ray Bees or Ray Capo called Don, he thought he was getting prank called, so he was "Fuck you," and no.
I'm gonna call you after this and tell you I'm Ray Capo. I'm gonna be yo, Ray Capo, you guys trying to play Vitus? What's up? No, I can only imagine though, because really at that time too, you know, I feel like people have to remember what the communications are like, and there's no like, you don't even know who's calling you. There's no like, you know, ID. There's nothing. And some motherfucker goes, "Yo, it's Ray Capo."
Yeah, you're like rotary phone is ringing, and like,
like
it's so funny. But
yeah,
that show was with like YDL and like Altercation maybe or something like that. And that was like our first show in the city, and it was super cool. And
yeah. Did
and
it
like,
feel like for you, when you were playing these other gigs, is it like a goal? Like, yeah, we just want to play like CBs once.
yeah,
like
that was
whatever.
it. That was it. Like that was the highest aspiration. And like, I went to that first show. I think it was my first CB show in April of '86, Agnostic Front, and then by August of '87, we Breakdown was playing CVs, and we were playing with like Verbal Assault and Uniform Choice, both bands that we loved, and like, and you were asking like how, what our reaction. I didn't really gauge any reaction at any of our shows. Like, we were just nervous and just playing, and like it was cool and everything. But like when we played that first CV show, that at that point, like everyone knew the lyrics. It was like, wow, this is like really happening. Like people really like our band. I'm excited. And then we broke up. Like, but then that was the last show we ever played together.
And then it's like, cool, this is sick. It's basically like, if I were to tell the story, you guys are the twisted sister of hardcore, and then you guys wrote like, "We're not going to take it," and then like broke up right afterwards. That's the way I would describe that. Because we weren't accepted in the city, just like they were, man. I'm an SMF, I know. So basically, yeah. Because I mean, this is kind of really interesting because it's like, you know, you have Breakdown and Raw Deal and then Killing Time, and it all kind of, you know, kind of is kind of the same sort of kind of general group of people, it feels like, but I never really understood how that all kind of came to be. So why did the band, why did Breakdown stop, and then Raw Deal, and what was like the start and stop of all that? Because I'm a little foggy as to like why all that shit happened.
I can't really make it any more clear because it wasn't clear. It was just like, you know, it was just like late teen, like kind of rage, you know, and people just like not getting along with one another, and like maybe a fight over a girl that was probably not anyone was really in a serious relationship with. And the next thing you know, it's like bands like warring each other, and it's like, and we split into two halves. So that's what happened. So it is a lot of the same people. Me and Drago and Rich were in Breakdown, and we split with Jeff and Don, yeah. And it's just weird. Is that there was never. It's hard to think about because like, there was never any talk of like, oh, we got this band, let's like work it out, let's like reconcile our differences. It was more like, I'm gonna kill you. I was like,
I should have just come over there with a pair of boxing gloves, just like time travel, and be like, I'm gonna save Breakdown, and just a couple boxing gloves, a 6-pack of beer, wing it out, and then we could have had like 10 more records. But yeah, no, and it's really interesting. I think that sometimes, you know, we fail, you know, when we're looking back at all these things, and I mean, you've made so much great music over time, but you're like, dude, I was 17 fucking years old, 18 years old, you know, like you look back, like in Tomb, Broke Left Hand Path, and all those fucking kids were like, they were 18 or something, but they were geniuses. They were like amazing. And it's really interesting to kind of remember that it's like, at the end of the day, this is some like young teenage kind of beef that fucked it up, right?
Yeah. I mean, the thing, you know, it's the same thing that kind of that same like anger and energy that drives you into the music is like, you know, it's like kind of it forced us to split up, you know.
Yeah, it's not always something that's meant for longevity, and I think that's fine, right?
Yeah, I think it's totally fine.
Yeah,
and strangely enough, Breakdown has been back together in the original lineup, the original 5 guys. I think it's 10 years now. We didn't make a year the first time around.
Yeah, and I think it's so funny to see you. I mean, you could just feel the friendship. You could feel the camaraderie being around you guys. And obviously, I was like a zygote when you guys first started playing, but I've been around you guys at Tompkins. I seen you guys at Vitus, obviously, when we, you know, and the band is fucking great, but the vibe is high. You know what I mean? It's it's really good. Everyone's there and excited and feeling good, and you could really feel that that camaraderie and that kind of unqualifiable thing that usually is what brings good bands together. So you guys sort of split, and then that was like when Raw Deal kind of cropped up out of this sort of division here, right?
Yeah. And it didn't take very long. I think that show was, that Uniform Choice show was in August of '87. And by the day after Thanksgiving '87 was the first practice of Raw Deal.
Everybody's home for the holidays, baby. Let's fire it up.
It's really funny because when we did play that show at CB's, I had written the song Telltale, which is you know, the one of the Raw Deal songs, and we played it instrumentally because Jeff hadn't come up with any lyrics for it yet. It was brand new, and Anthony Camignoli was sitting there riding on the stage with us as we played it, you know, and then just a few short months later, we would be in Drago's backyard in his garage and playing that song. So yeah, it was like just a few months later that we got together. I think you know, at the time, you know, like I talked about record store guys, you know, at the time, like Some Records was the place downtown, and you know, Dwayne was the glue that you know, connected all the people and all the music and all the demo tapes, and like, you know, before every show and in between like sets and after every show, like there was so many people crowded into Some Records, and it was like a tiny little room, like in the basement of in the East Village there. So like I think it was Dwayne that was like, you know, hey, Anthony from Token Entry is looking for a band, and you guys are looking for a singer. You should do it. So credit.
I think it's always interesting to kind of point out, and I love that you're doing this, by the way, is the either like the places or just these other meeting grounds that would sort of happen that would really influence the development of bands and stuff. You know, where you hung out, where different like scene folks hung out who are like kind of like-minded, and that's amazing. So you were recommended Anthony, or like you were aware of the fact that he was looking to jam by the dude who ran Some Records.
Yeah, I think we might have even like put up a sign or something like that, and Dwayne saw us putting up a sign. He's like, hey, why don't you get in touch with Anthony? And then the funny thing was, like, we got in touch with Anthony, and he just showed up with Mike. Like, we weren't even looking for like a fifth member, but he brought one along. So yeah, so he brought us. So like we became a 5-piece instantly. How
was that for you as a guitar player and like a songwriter and stuff like that? Now starting to accommodate, you know, 2 guitars and things of that nature. Because were you just like psyched on it, or were you just like, fuck it, motherfucker showed up?
Exactly, dude. It was like there did a lot, you know. It's like a lot of thought didn't go into it at the time. You know, it wasn't like you know, how are we gonna write our like Thin Lizzy guitar harmonies. It was just like, oh, there's another dude here. Is he cool? I guess so.
That's great.
And I had seen him before because he was in. I think Mike was in the New York Hoods. And he was also like kind of in Sick of It All for a couple of shows, and like he was a dude that I would see around, you know.
Yeah. So he was kind of like he was kind of verified by Camignoli anyway. Like, coming into the whole thing. So what was the chemistry like with Raw Deal? Obviously, Breakdown has a very different sound, and the Raw Deal kind of evolves into Killing Time. But you know, Anthony is obviously like a huge part. His lyrics, his sort of charisma, and like what he kind of gave on the mic was definitely something very different. And how did you kind of when you started jamming, I mean, it wasn't necessarily that it was going to work. When were you like, ooh, this is actually okay? I'm feeling this shit. Even the extra guy I like.
It's funny because it's like I don't know if you have any experience with the first Token Entry 7-inch that Anthony sung on, and he sung it was just sort of like, it was kind of laid back and like,
no, it wasn't as aggressive. It was aggressive, you know.
But he was a fan of breakdown, and like, so we did a couple of songs and it was like, all right, you know, and he's like, hey, you want me to sing hard like Jeff? We're like, it's like, yeah, why don't you give it a try? You know? like the minute he just like let loose on a song, I think that's when we were all like, oh, this is fucking rad. You know, like this is So it was like the first practice, like after we realized that he wasn't going to sing like, you know, like he did in Token Entry.
Got it. Yeah, and I think that that's really interesting too, because a lot of these things too. I mean, you're young. You're like looking for confidence too. Sometimes it's not easy to just come out, you know, swinging, or like bring your ideas to the table and stuff. You know, there's like a certain shyness that can happen, or you know, maybe someone's a little bit more the leader or something like that in bands, and like there's a dynamic at play too. So it's cool that, you know, you guys set the scene, and then all of a sudden what came out was like, yeah, do that.
yeah.
Keep going with that. So Raw Deal kind of, you know, it existed for kind of like a short period, and then Killing Time kind of evolved out of it. What was the transition like for that, and why like the name change and all this?
Well, everyone kind of looks at those two bands as like different bands, but there really was the same exact band. And there was no break. There was no like, oh, we're changing our style or we're a different band. You know, it was simply, there was another band that had the name Raw Deal, you know. so we changed it, you know. I think it was the band in England or something like that. You know, I don't know, when we hooked up with the label In Effect, I think they found out, hey, you know, someone else has got the name. I mean, in reality, we probably didn't need to change it because I've never heard of any other band called Raw Deal, but someone was using it, and that's when we changed it to Killing Time.
Yeah, I didn't really think it was anything kind of more than something like that, but I guess I had to ask, because I was just like, why the fuck would they change their name anyway? And Raw Deal is a great name. I like Killing Time as well. It's fucking hard and it's awesome. But I'm just like, Raw Deal and Killing Time, both are awesome names, but I'm like, why would you move off a Raw Deal? Like, that's just a
I know.
Yeah, so it was kind of like the label finding out and being like, hey, let's avoid any problems in the future.
Yeah.
And then at that time,
we didn't know anything. Like everything was new to us. Like the idea of being on a label was just like, what are we doing? How do we do this?
Yeah, for sure. And I guess that was maybe one of your first lessons in like, oh, we're like actually kind of like making like records now, like on a bit broader scale, right?
Yes.
And speaking of, I feel like obviously, you know, with Raw Deal and Breakdown, you guys are kind of, you know, like the production level of things. It was cool. It sounded raw. It was great. But then Brightside, I mean, just hits in like a completely different way. What was it like, kind of putting that record together? And did that feel like you guys were entering into like a different level as far as like, okay, we got this cool label behind us. We might have a little bit more resources to make a record. I feel like the songwriting was just going up and up from that point. How did you kind of feel about putting that together, and what was sort of like the atmosphere like?
It was pretty shocking, to be honest, because we had only recorded the Breakdown demo, and then we recorded the Raw Deal demo, and then we recorded like the sort of lost second Raw Deal demo. And all those things were just recorded live onto a cassette. So that was just like the band just going and playing all at once.
Really? Not even like 4-track or anything like that? Just live, one thing in the room?
Everything was... No, there was more mics, but it was like... it was just mixed down to a stereo mix. So it's like There was no putting anything on afterwards. The vocals and all the guitars and everything was just live, like we were playing a show.
Yeah.
So that's what we knew how to do. And you would do. I mean, we did the breakdown demo. I think we rented 2 hours. I think we maybe for the raw deal demo we upped it to 3. I don't know. It's like,
they're like, hey, we're moving it to 3 whole hours, which is amazing. So it just to quickly say that it's not that those recordings, they have an amazing energy and the songwriting is so strong, and it's almost like a lot like just a live recording, like if you guys had played a show, like it feels that way, and I think it captured that certain energy. But Brightside feels like production, and also felt like the abilities of the band and the songwriting capabilities were just growing to this sort of head. So
yeah.
what is, like, did the label hook you up with the studio, or like how did you guys start putting that together?
I think we recorded in a place called Normandy Sound in Warren, Rhode Island, and I think the reason we went there is because I think Leeway had recorded there. I think that's why we went there, and then
not a bad reason, man.
Oh yeah, it was the best of reasons. I mean, so yeah, but when we got there, it was like, wow. It's like, first of all, there was an apartment upstairs, and we had all our boys with us too, you know, like just to make it conducive for working, you know. And
yeah,
and look, when we got there, it was like fucking Brad Whitford from Aerosmith was like sitting at the mixing desk, like working on some shit. We're like, oh shit, this is a whole nother world. And so it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work, and we did not even because I mean, none of us I had never tracked guitars. It was just I played live and someone recorded it. So it's like suddenly like you're like tracking guitars, and like someone's listening to everything you're doing and telling you got to do it again, and you're doubling it, and
there was kind of like a level of professionalism there that existed that kind of demanded a new approach from you guys a little bit. How, like, did you feel like, damn, like this is taxing, or were you like, oh man, like as we're going through this, I'm really seeing how it's pieced together, and I really like how this is going? Or was it like, I don't know why they're making me do this fucking shit like multiple times, but it revealed itself?
No, we were super excited and super into the process and into what we were learning and the way it was coming together. But we really didn't know what we were stepping into, because, and you know what, the guys that worked at the label too were like, they were neophyte label guys too. They didn't know so much of how things work. So they pretty much just sent us up there as bands. You know, we didn't have a producer. Like we never worked on the songs like a pre-production or anything like that. We had no idea like what we were supposed to do. So, you know, thankfully there was a house engineer there by the name of Tom Soares that really just kind of stepped into the role and like helped us co-produce the record. And like we learned a shit ton from him. And like
that's incredible.
Yeah, really.
It's just kind of like fate. And shout out to Balaram, who said Normandy Sound records some solid metal crossover albums. And it's probably because of the Leeway connection too, you know, like it's always that thing, right? It's like, or with Don Fury, it's like maybe somebody hears one record they like, and then, or like, you know, and then it's like it's a record that gets a little bit popular or something, and then either other bands or people, like, they follow that because they're trying to achieve maybe similar results and stuff. So maybe they saw something like that in you guys. But it's incredible that there was like no assigned person, but that Tom just shows up and is like, hey, I got a vision for this. Because honestly, I mean, in advance of this, I listened to it again, and I've listened to the record, you know, a million times, but just the guitar tones on it to me are just super like timeless to me. And I know that you're kind of a big AC/DC fan. I've always known that about you and stuff like that. And some of the things that tonally and even a lot of the mid-tempo that happens much more on the right side, I'm like, this fucking rocks, like in a capital R like kind of level. and I absolutely love it. And it sounds like really, because that came out like what, 88, 89?
That came out in '89, I believe.
It felt like the bridge. It felt like a bridge between eras to me. Like it was just, like kind of moving into maybe like what '90s sort of hardcore would become, and what Sick of It All started continue to do, and like everyone's kind of heavying up their sound a little bit more and whatever. That was just to me kind of amazing, and the fact that you guys kind of just walked into it with like the songs, and then like an engineer who's like, hey, I think I know what to do with this, is insane.
It was scary at first. It was like definitely like there was the engineers were definitely pissed because we didn't know what we were doing, and then I just remember Anthony was just furious because like we were up at this place spending all this money and we didn't know what we were doing. He's like he's yelling at the label, the engineers yelling at us, but like within 2 days we're like, all right, we're here, we're doing this, and everyone just like kind of went to work and like made it happen.
That's pretty amazing. That I think maybe certain people might shrink in that moment a little bit too, like shy away from it. But all the performances are so great, and obviously it's regarded as a timeless record in the genre, and really just like I said, to me it like when I started listening to hardcore when I was like in my teen years. And everything was Madball, Sick of It All, Vision of Disorder, all that sort of stuff was really happening. Indecision, Dead Guy, all that mid-90s stuff. But, like, I remember, older folks like Ron Grimaldi and older folks being like, if you like Sick of It All and stuff, yeah, shout out, my fucking brother. And people like that being like, if you like Sick of It All, you have to listen to this band Killing Time. He's like, and other things of that era. And it felt like they were like, this is the bridge between a lot of shit. And that's the way I learned of the band, it's like, and I'm coming at it from like a different era,
right.
And it was, and I heard it. I was like, holy shit. Okay. Yeah. I kind of get it. This is amazing. Like this is kind of this whole progression, but unfortunately I wasn't there for it. So, when I do talk to people there, they're like, dude, Killing Time when Brightside came out was something to sort of witness, and it got a lot of press, and it ended up being very popular in its time. How did you feel when you kind of sat there and you listened back to it for the first time? Were you just kind of like, oh wow, this is I understand now why we did all this crazy shit in the studio?
Totally. It was like, all right, I get why I was like sitting in this. Like, I just remember one day in particular where it was like, I don't know if they were trying to punish me or if it was just like the way you did things at the time. But I had four big Marshall cabinets, 412s, like in an isolation room with two heads, and they had me doubling the tracks, but they put me in the room with the amps, and I was just there, and everyone went out to have a good time because like I wasn't going to be finishing anytime soon, and I was just in there all day long. It's like playing this, like. So yeah, when I heard the record back, I was like, all right, I get it.
Yeah,
my shit needed to be tightened up.
Yeah, and amazing. And what did it feel like when it was finally released and you had a little an effect behind it? You had like good people behind it, and it felt like at the time you guys are kind of leading the way for the scene. Did it feel like all of a sudden that was it hit kind of hard right out the gate?
I mean, it was hard to have like any perspective like that at the time, because it was like, all right, we recorded it, like now we're gonna go play every weekend, like whoever calls us from anywhere that we could drive to, we're going. Like we're not even gonna talk about like how much we're getting paid or who else is playing. It's just like, all right, we're going. Like we've got some kids like mom's number on a napkin, and a vague idea of where a club is in like some town, like a street address and like a map, and like we're gonna go. So it's like there wasn't a lot of thinking about like, oh, did we do a good record? How's it being? How's it reacting? It was just like we were just playing. We were just playing everywhere.
Yeah, totally, for sure.
But it was fun to be recognized by like things like Thrasher magazine and like sitting down with Pusshead to do an interview, and like and people taking photos and like all these like all this press and stuff happening. It was a lot of fun. Like it was very new and cool because like the only thing we had done before that is just like, you know, saw Maxim Rock and Roll right about our cassette tape in the back. Like,
sure. And it's just kind of interesting because I feel like it's right around the time where like, you know, hardcore ended up becoming, you know, not mainstream or anything of that nature, but in my estimation, but it started touching more places. And maybe later on, you know, in the mid 90s and so forth, I mean, it got like a kind of as close as it could be. It was like Sick of It All was on MTV too, and people were bugging or something, you know, but it was still, to me, it was still all underground music. And I think you guys are sort of like touching that a little bit more, like, people, like this is kind of coming, like Thrasher Magazine is crossing over into different worlds. And it felt like CMJ had written about it and other things like that too. I remember Steve Murphy, you know, telling me, he's like, yeah, man, like these guys with to me were like the first hardcore band I knew that started kind of breaking out of like the hardcore scene, like this more strict New York hardcore scene, and other people were starting to kind of get into it like on the peripheries of kind of other cultures. And that was kind of, that to me is always interesting because, you know, obviously, you know, things like skateboarding and graffiti and other things like that, these scenes started having more and more of a crossover as time went on, especially in the late 80s leading into the 90s.
It's really true. It was hard to see that at the time though, because we were just really like, you know, hardcore is for the sake of hardcore and it's for the sake of hardcore kids. And it was hard to really to notice, because you're right in the middle of it, you know, how much the New York hardcore scene was starting to like kind of like get into the ears of people around the world, you know, and started to get kind of have like bigger magazines like pay attention to it, and how, you know, like, you know, the Cro-Mags were going on tour with Motorhead and like having like things like that, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, whoa, Voivod and Cro-Mags are playing together. And then, like, you know, years later, you know, it's like Obituary and Madball or like whatever. And like just sort of these crossover moments. So I was
Drew just wrote over there about like, it was funny too at the time, like a Killing Time shirt appeared in like a story in Newsweek, which we were totally, it was just about the kids of today. It was like some kid with a skateboard and like a Killing Time t-shirt. Like it was pretty cool.
Yeah. It's interesting how all those things, when they pop up at that time too, it's like you don't really know about it. It's probably like somebody who's into Killing Time or something, like put your sticker up in like the background of a movie or like other shit, and like it starts percolating. I think it's as the scene grew up too, different people who are creative in all elements of the scene started also working and permeating into other worlds, and they kind of brought hardcore as an influence with them, which I think is like the coolest shit.
I think, yeah, I mean, there's so many people that came out of the hardcore scene that ended up in all kind of manner of media, like for the next like 20 years, you know, like yeah, it's very cool.
For sure. So we got like about 5-6 minutes left, and you know, I would be remiss if I didn't also kind of fast forward and mention Kings Destroy, the band that you're in now, which is an amazing band, kind of a doomy rock band, really, in reality, especially the last record. And it was kind of built off of also kind of a progression of, you know, some of this people that you had met through the scene through the years to do this sort of metal band. What was it like putting that together and playing slower than you probably ever have?
I mean, I was such a huge fan of all that music, so it didn't feel strange at all. It felt great, you know.
Yeah.
Especially because, you know, I'm a little older, you know. I could still play fast with anyone out there, but like, you know, it's just like sometimes it's getting a little bit slower and heavier. It's like it feels just right, you know. So yeah. I mean, I'll tell you though, it's like there's always a thing though. It's like there's always a hardcore energy that I have, and my brethren in Kings Destroy, that like we bring to it. You know, it's like we're not gonna be as like, we're always gonna have a little edge to it, you know, and it's like we're always gonna be moving around a little more. We're always gonna have a little, or maybe leaning on it a little bit, you know. So it's like, yeah, I'm totally happy playing slow, heavy stuff, but yeah, sometimes you gotta rein yourself in, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Because there's like so much muscle memory of just raging, you know. Like,
yeah. And it's a nice new challenge, and I would like, just to tell everybody out there, it's like, man, if you guys are into, doom or anything of like in that world, check out Kings Destroy. It's a fucking great band, and it's like a really nice kind of counterpoint, and I think it kind of brings your guitar journey a little bit like full circle to some of the earliest stuff that we had been talking about.
Right, it's so true.
Competition, whether it be Led Zeppelin or Celtic Frost or some of these sort of kind of like slower in the pocket sort of things, a little bit more blues based, and amazing guitar tones, super good. And I think that there's like a Carlness that still like all of this stuff which is important. Great music, it tends to be in the musician's hands, especially in guitar playing and stuff. So there was a question here.
Let me just tell people that record is called Phantasmanera. That's our most recent record. So give it a listen. So
yeah, it's great. It's like a beautiful 70s-esque rock doom, like lovely record. And to me, my favorite Kings Destroy record.
Alert there.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So we had a question for Balaram here, which I think is really valid, since you're also, you're tied in with Earthquaker Devices, and you've been helping them, which is a great boutique pedal company as well.
Great company, great people.
Yeah, super cool. We've done some awesome events with them at Vitus.
That was so much fun.
And like super great. So you're kind of known a little bit too as, having great guitar tones, a bit of a gearhead, and Balaram asked, what's like your favorite, kind of guitar setup and why, or maybe what you're using at the moment, What do we got?
We got some, we got a couple of vintage Marshalls, which I love. And then we've got like a 1987 Marshall, which makes me think of early hardcore and Raw Deal. And then we got sort of a modern, like Mesa Boogie amp for like some like modern metal and hardcore tones. And then you got a classic Gibson Les Paul, and then you got like a little more of like an 80s, 90s metal shredder, like hardcore act. So like, I'm,
you got something for everybody, man.
I like a variety of tones. Like, I'm a big Marshall guy mostly, but I like, some of the boogie stuff too. And, I love like, for pedals, for like heavy pedal sounds, I'm kind of like a tube screamer guy more than I'm a fuzz guy. There's so much to talk about in that realm, but like that was a nice little tour right there with some stuff.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I knew, and also I've been to Carl's house a bit.
And there's a bicycle back there.
I know that they're right there, so it's like, Carl, just turn the camera around. We'll fucking see what's going on. Well, Carl, we're about to wrap this up.
Can I plug a couple things?
Yeah, plug a couple things. That's
so
what I was going to ask.
I want to talk about, we talked a lot about Brightside, but Killing Time had a second record, which is kind of our lost record because it never really came out on vinyl, and it came out at sort of a strange time, and it didn't get a lot of distribution, but we really love the record. It's called The Method, and it's coming out in like a deluxe vinyl package. And pre-order is going to be available before Halloween. It's coming out on Blackout Records, so I hope people will check that record out.
Nice.
I'd really love at some point to go play a show and just play that record back to front. There's 18 songs on it, so it's long. For
I know a place, man. It's cool.
But I wanted to plug that, and also I was in a band called Alone in a Crowd for a short period of time.
Yes.
And we did a benefit show for our guitarist who got very ill, and that whole live show is coming out as a 12-inch on Atomic Action Records soon. What else is there to plug? I want to talk about. I have a new hardcore band that had a couple of shows in April that got canceled because of the pandemic. But the band's called Dread LLC, and I'm also going to be working on a record by a band called Gordita Beat, who has a single up right now on SoundCloud. It's another hardcore band, and those are just some of the things I'm working on. But
that's great, man. And it's I love hearing about it and good to know. And one of the things I always appreciate about Carl is not only your great playing, your good energy, awesome dude, but really active, always just listening to stuff, and as truly as we can all see over the past hour, lived a musical life, and it's fucking awesome. Carl, you're the fucking man. I look forward to all this stuff as the new stuff. If you guys haven't heard anything of what we talked about, please do yourself a favor and listen to some of the best hardcore that's ever been produced, in my opinion. Carl, you're the man. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. This was great.
Stay safe, my brother. I'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Peace.